let me open the Maya very quickly. We have a fresh window of Maya in here, and let's create a grid with the help of polygon cube. And yeah, we have the grid in here, alright, which will work as a ground. Okay, let me turn off the grid and let's create a sphere. Let me bring this up. Alright, so we have this sphere and a cube. I'll select the sphere and go to rigid bodies, and here you will see some options. The first option is create active rigid body. So when you say active rigid body, it means that something is moving, something is dynamic, and it reacts to the forces, it reacts to these fields in here. When I select the sphere and say create active rigid body, we have some more tabs in here. And the second option is create passive rigid bodies. Passive rigid bodies are different types of rigid bodies which collides with active rigid bodies but doesn't react to the fields. Alright, so in here we have this ground. I'll select the ground and say create passive rigid bodies, because this sphere will fall down and collide with the ground. So let's select the sphere, go to fields menu and add gravity. Alright, so we have added gravity in here, and the default value of gravity is 9.8 meter per second. You should understand that gravity is a force that pulls your object down. It will make this sphere fall down, and gravity is an accelerating force. It's not a uniform force. Let's check what is happening. Alright, this sphere is bouncing. The sphere is coming down, colliding with the ground and bouncing back. Yeah, and the most important thing is we haven't added any keys like which we do in animation. Animation is basically just the opposite of dynamics. Let's check what other options we have and what other options we can manipulate and modify to get a realistic output. Let's learn about these attributes in here. So let's select the sphere, and the very first option is mass. It tells you what the object is made up of. Mass will tell you the heaviness of the object. So more the mass, more the heaviness. If I increase this to 500, the sphere will come down faster. Alright, make this as 1, the default value. The very next option is center of mass. If I change this to wireframe, you can see we have this cross mark in the center of the sphere. This tells you where the mass is actually located. So the mass, the center of mass, is actually at the center of the sphere, right? If I just offset the center of mass a bit, let's see what will happen. If I move this to minus x, negative x direction 1 unit, let's see what will happen. If I play this, the ball is coming down, and it's behaving very weirdly because we have shifted the mass to its negative x direction. Alright, so this is the effect of shifting center of mass to some other direction. For a realistic output, let's keep the center of mass at the very center of the body, the sphere. Alright, after center of mass you can see you have a lock center of mass. When you don't want to change the center of mass, you can just lock it. After locking it, if you input some value, it won't take, because the center of mass is locked, and it will give you a warning. The center of mass is locked. To edit the center of mass, set the lock center of mass attribute to false. You just have to turn this off if you want to change this value. Alright, the next option is static friction. So before learning about what is static friction and what is dynamic friction, you need to learn what is friction actually. So friction is a force that resists the relative motion of a rigid body. So when it collides with this, and when it will come in the contact of the ground will try to stop the motion of your sphere, your moving body. So if I just increase this in size, if I increase the size of my ground plane, and if I add some velocity, we have the option in here, initial velocity. If I input some value, let's say -8, and let's check what is the effect. Yeah, it's moving in the minus x direction and stopping after some time. That's just because of the friction. We have friction added into this. So static friction works in this way when you have one object moving and the other object static. When you have two active rigid bodies moving in the same direction or maybe in the other direction, and when they come into contact with each other, dynamic friction works. So when you have multiple rigid bodies, multiple active rigid bodies moving, you can use dynamic friction. Alright, the second option is, let me change the initial velocity to 0. Alright, the second option is bounciness. As the term says, bounciness, it means the value of bounciness. If I increase this to 2, you can see the ball is still bouncing. So we have a lot of bounciness in this. With every hit, bounciness is increasing. So for a realistic output, let's keep this 0.5. Yeah, so with every hit it will come down and settle down. Alright, the next option is damping. How damping works? Damping is actually like friction, but it stops the motion of something moving when it's not in the contact. It doesn't matter if the thing is in contact or not, damping will stop it. Alright, the next option is impulse. And what is impulse? Impulse is a force in some direction. If I go back to my previous frame, let's keep this -2. Still it's going in that direction. Yeah, so this is the effect of impulse. With impulse, the body will move in the direction you have inputted the value. Alright, the next option is impulse position. If I input some value in the position, it will take that value and try to move in that direction. But it works when you have some value in impulse. Impulse 1 and impulse position 10. So it's shifting a little and then moving. Let me keep the default value as 0 of impulse position. The next option is spin impulse. Spin, as it says, it spins the body. Let me keep this 0.2 and spin impulse 1. Yeah, the body is spinning, the geometry is spinning. So if you want to add some kind of rotation to your moving body, moving active rigid body, you can add spin impulse to it. Alright, the next option after this is initial settings. Under initial settings we have so many options. So initial settings basically work with the initial value. The first option is initial spin. If you add some initial spin, it will give the moving body some kind of spin initially, and it will dissipate after some time. The next option is initial position. This decides where your body will lie when you play the simulation, the very initial position. If I change this to -10 and if I play this again, yeah, the body's moving to -10 and then simulating. The next option is initial orientation. You can change the angle of your moving body with the help of initial orientation. If I play this, it's rotating a little and then falling down. Just a little rotation, but it won't animate, it won't simulate actually. It will just add some kind of rotation initially. Alright, let me make this 0 and yeah, done. Then we have initial velocity. Velocity, when something is moving, it has some kind of velocity to it. If you want to add some kind of effect of velocity to your moving body, you can input some value and it is moving in x direction and slowing down. Alright, and I have some unique example for you guys. Let me open the file very quickly. I have this bowling alley set for you guys, and let's see how the rigid bodies actually work with some practical examples. So select this, go to soft rigid bodies option and click on create active rigid bodies. Same here, select all these skittles, go to soft rigid bodies and say create active rigid bodies, because this will fall down. Select your ramp, go to create soft rigid bodies and say create passive rigid bodies, because this is my ground. This will help the bowling ball and skittles collide with itself. Alright, and let's check what is happening. Yeah, nothing is happening because we haven't added gravity till now. So I'll select the ball, go to outliner and select my skittles, and bowling ball. I'll go to field and add gravity to it. Yeah, and we have added gravity to the scene, and now the ball is falling down and colliding with the ramp. Alright, now this is not enough. We want this ball to be going in this direction and hitting the skittles. So let's select the ball and go to the rigid body tab, and with the help of these options we'll create the skittle effect, the bowling ball effect. Alright, so we have the same option, the same old option, mass, center of gravity, and we don't want to change this for the time being. Let's just increase the value of mass to 5. I'll just go to initial settings and add some velocity n minus x direction, because I want my ball to move in minus x direction. So initial velocity minus 20, and let's see what is happening. Yeah, it is going in the minus x direction, and yeah, hitting the ball and bowling skittles are falling down. This is what we wanted to create. Let's check a single frame render of this effect. And we have this as a render. Alright, very nice. So you guys can create some similar kind of effects using this rigid body dynamics. So before rendering any effects, what you need to do, you need to cache the simulation. We have a simple trick to cache this rigid bodies. What I'll do, I'll just select the bowling ball and I'll select all these skittles, go to the first frame, go to edit, keys and bake simulation. So this option will bake your simulation and turn all the motion into keyframes. So save this file and let me render the sequence out for you.